G'day, I'm Paul. So us Australians have gone dual cab ute crazy. Both the Ford Ranger and the Toyota Hilux are generally both the best selling vehicles in Australia every single month. And this is kind of the Big Mac of dual cab utes. They haven't really changed the formula all that much. You buy it knowing what to expect. It is the Ford Ranger. This is the XLT, which is right up at the top there before you get into all those little special editions. It's priced at just under $61,000. This competes with that entire dual cab ute segment that includes things like the Toyota Hilux, the Mitsubishi Triton, Volkswagen Maric, Isuzu D-Max, you name it. There is a competitor in that segment. So today we're going to do a detailed review of this with just a little bit of off-roading as well to see if it's any good. If you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this review, you can use the time codes up on the screen there, or if you're on YouTube, just scroll down and use the chapters below. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and make sure you hit the bell icon as well, because it'll tell you every single time we drive a popular vehicle. Let's have a look at the exterior. Before we start though, this is the 2-litre diesel. If you are interested in the 3.2-litre 5-cylinder version, we have reviewed that in the FX4, and you can watch that review up here. Today's going to be all about the 2-litre. So you've got 7 exterior colours to choose from, and all but white and fire truck red are an additional $650. So let's have a look at the design. This hasn't changed a great deal. Before, when I mentioned that the Ranger is the Big Mac of dual cab utes, it's because you just know what you're getting. Nothing is really different every single year with this car, and that's a good thing because they've got the formula right and they just keep building on it and improving on it slightly. So you've got this big grille here with the chrome, and then it's offset with the color there, and then you can see down the bottom here front parking sensors, and if you do get the optional pack with the radar cruise control, you get a little radar cruise sensor in there as well. In terms of headlights, you have bi-LED headlights with daytime running lights off to the side. This is a new headlight cluster that was rolled in with a Ranger update recently. By the way, we do know what the 2022 version of the Ford Ranger and the Everest are going to look like. So if you want to see a little bit more detail on that, click up there. Jump around to the side here. You get standard 17-inch alloy wheels, and then you get this all-terrain tire as well. This is going to help you with light off-roading. And in theory, this will provide a little bit of extra road noise, but we do know after having driven the Raptor, which has a big old meaty set of all-terrain tyres, the cabin's really well insulated. So I'm hoping it's the same story here when we hit the road. We're not going to hear too much inside the cabin as we rumble along. So you'll be able to tell the difference between the 3.2-litre and the 2-litre with this badge on the side. The 2-litre says bi-turbo. So keep that in mind. Over here, you've got some chrome on top of that wing mirror with an indicator built in. Some side steps, and then privacy glass, and then come around to the back. Now you'll notice here, unlike the new Hilux, which has a really cool set of LED tail lights, this still uses those incandescent globes, which is, yeah, same thing, but it would be nice to see an LED setup on the rear here, kind of like the F-150 in the States. So this tray, you can see big Ford logo, Ranger down the bottom, and then they integrate the camera just under there, so it's tucked in very nicely. But it does mean when the tray is down, you're not going to be able to see anything. I think it's the Maric that has a camera base down here, so you're able to see things when you're reversing. Now, what about tray? Let's have a look at that. Now, before I run you through the dimensions here, I like this torsion bar. So this means that this tray is easy to close and open. Again, some of the utes in this segment don't have this, so you just have to put a little bit of extra weight in. You've got some cup holders, as I like to call them, up here as well. Now, in terms of payload and dimensions, you've got just over 1 ton of payload, a little over 1,500 millimeters of load length, a little over 1,500 millimeters of load width, and then 1,139 millimeters between the wheel arches. And then down the front there, you've got a waterproof 12-volt outlet, 3.5 ton braked towing capacity as well. So in terms of the specifications, this ticks all the boxes. So we're inside the Ford Ranger. Let's kick off with the key. This is what it looks like. You have unlock, lock, and then some blanks, and then a Ford logo on the back. It's a proximity sensing key, so you just leave that in your pocket, grab the door handle, and then use the push button start. Okay, what about the styling? So look, this is starting to feel a little bit old now. This has been out for a while. You can remember the original PX Ranger had a little tiny screen up the top, and then they evolved into using Sync and now Sync 3. But what hasn't really changed is the materials that they've used throughout the Ranger range. So for the moment, this is going to do the job. And look, if you think of this as a dual cab ute, it is okay that all of this stuff is scratchy and hard wearing. It just doesn't feel as premium as some of the other competitors in this segment, and it becomes more of an issue when you head beyond the XLT. This used to be the top spec before the Wildtrak came in. Now if you spend a bit more money, they all kind of still feel the same, so you don't really feel like you're getting that sort of premium feel. But what about the touch points? Good news, they are nice and soft here on the door and also there as well. How soft are they? Well, we have our durometer. This tests surface hardness, and we have tested the surfaces on this car. If you want to see how this compares to other cars that we've tested, use the link in the description below. And finally, build quality. Everything kind of moves around a little bit. Up here's okay, actually. It's just this sort of lid that is a little bit wonky, but you know, I guess it'll be okay. Moving on to infotainment. This is Ford Sync 3. That's what Ford calls their infotainment system. Today we're going to do just a brief overview, but if you want to see a detailed review of this, click up here to watch the video we have already recorded. So this is what the main menu looks like. Audio, we have AM, FM, DAB+, digital radio, and you also have the ability to stream via Bluetooth or USB connectivity. I'll run you through smartphone mirroring in a second as well. There's also a menu here for the climate. So while you do operate your climate controls down lower, you still can operate them up here and change things like whether the AC is on or off and which direction everything is heading in. In the phone menu, this is where you connect your Bluetooth device, but this is also where you're able to set up things like smartphone mirroring and also settings for things like text messages. Now, in terms of smartphone mirroring, you have wired, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I'll show you what those look like. So full screen integration there of Apple CarPlay, super high resolution as well, and really quick too. It flicks between those screens with ease. Now, while this does have an inbuilt voice recognition system that you activate on the steering wheel, and it actually works really well, a long push of this sends those voice commands through to the phone, and then it's able to use your phone's voice recognition system to send commands through to the cloud to give you expanded ability to send text messages and call people, put in addresses and that kind of thing. I'll show you what Android Auto looks like. So another full screen integration, that all seems to work well. Let's have a look at the maps. They all move around super fast as well. So lots of phone connectivity there. The big news here with Ranger though is that they all now come with FordPass Connect. What is that? Well, it allows you to put an app on your telephone, and the app allows you to remotely start your car and interact with your car remotely. It has an inbuilt SIM card that then communicates with a third-party server that then communicates with your phone. So if it is a hot day outside, you can start the car, get it to cool down, or a cold day, vice versa. You can also remotely unlock the car as well. So that is now standard on the Ranger. So really good technology. Then, moving on from this, you also have the ability down here to change all of the car's settings, and there's a fair bit to go through in this. So if you do want more detail, have a look at our detailed infotainment review. Ahead of the driver, there are two screens either side of the speedometer. So the two screens allow you to control functions of the car. On the left-hand side, and that's controlled on the left-hand side of the steering wheel, you have entertainment, navigation, and phone. You can change those settings as you go. Then on the right-hand side, you have your fuel gauge. You also have the ability to go through the trip computer, different display modes. Your off-road settings come up there as well. You have your fuel economy, and finally driver assist settings, and also settings for the car in general. It's a really good setup, easy to use, and also importantly, easy to use while you're driving. You've also got a 6-speaker sound system, and then connectivity options come in the form of 2 USB ports, a 12-volt outlet, and check this out, a USB port up the top here for dash cam integration. I really love ingenuity like that. Let's talk safety tech. So you have autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian detection. You have a lane departure assistant. So because this is an EPAS system, an electrically assisted steering rack, it can pull you back into the lane ever so slightly if you veer out. Now keep in mind here that blind spot monitoring, a semi-autonomous parallel parking feature, and also radar cruise control is part of an option pack. So that'll cost you $1,500, and that adds in a few other bits and pieces as well. Auto dimming rear vision mirror up here. Finally, you have both front and rear parking sensors, and let's have a look at the reverse view camera. Quality of that isn't too bad. Like, it's not super clear, but you can see what you need to see. Clever thing is though, you have not only the outer guidelines, but also guidelines for the trailer hitch. And then on top of that, with one button, I'm able to zoom in and see how close I'm getting to that. So that's going to make attaching a trailer much easier. Righto, moving on to practicality, and we'll start with storage. I'll disconnect the phone so we've got a little bit more room to work with here. Where are you going to put it? Well, you've got plenty of room there in the cup holders. You've also got a slot down the bottom there which fits even big phones. It's not wireless charging, so it'll just sit down there. You'll need to plug it in if you want to charge it. What about bottles? Easily fit into there. We'll get rid of that key. Also teeth on the side, which will mean the bottle won't move around too much, and it's slightly grippy as well, so that'll hold things in nicely. You can also whack this one inside the door where you've got room for a bottle plus extra storage. Center console, dual tiered, so you've got a spot up there for your sunnies and other bits and pieces, and then a secondary tier. Watch this, dives right in there. It's also air conditioned too. Glove box, let's have a look at the size of that. Hey, that's massive, so that will easily fit in there. And then finally you have a spot up here for your sunnies. Okay, moving on to comfort, you have dual zone automatic climate control. Now, even though these are cloth seats, you can add leather seats and 18-inch alloy wheels as part of that option pack I mentioned before that brings with it extra safety and convenience tech for just $1,500, and I think it's probably worth it. These look fine, but leather's easier to keep clean and all that kind of thing. Either way, they are comfortable. It's a good place to be seated, and the steering wheel sits nicely in the hand, although it only goes up and down. It doesn't have any reach adjustment. It's a little bit disappointing, but all of this stuff's super easy to reach, and then you have your voice recognition to back everything up. Okay, second row of the Ranger. Now, you can do a fair bit of stuff here. So let's start up the top here. You can drop this all the way forward. That reveals a jack and also, I wonder what that is. Tire iron. It also reveals your two top tether points, and then in addition to that, you have ISOFIX points for the outboard seats. And then if we pull this little lever here, this pulls the entire bottom of this up. Have a look at how much storage you have under here, and just to give you an idea, basically lose an entire bottle in there. You could potentially even fit a laptop in there as well to hide it from prying eyes. What about room? Oh, there's no grab handle. Would have been nice. Okay, so in terms of room in here, knee room is reasonable. I'm sort of hard up against that seat, but keep in mind this is quite far back. Toe room's pretty reasonable. Headroom is okay. I think if you were taller than me, you're probably going to be touching that ever so slightly. In terms of center armrest, two cup holders in there. They're rubberized as well. And then inside the door, you can put a bottle too. There's no air vents back here, but they do fix that compromise by giving you an actual power outlet, which is pretty cool, plus a 12-volt outlet, no USB. Then you have mat pockets behind the seats, and then grab handles up the top. So we've hit the road in the Ranger. So the 2-litre diesel version of this, which is fitted to this car, it's a 4-cylinder turbocharged diesel, makes 157 kilowatts of power and 500 newton meters of torque. So it's a fair lashing of torque, and it really suits the characteristic of this car because it's mated to a 10-speed automatic. By the way, when I say car, I mean ute. If you ever hear me say that, don't think that I'm referring to a little car. I'm referring to this. It's just an Australian thing. So what that means is that when you do punch it, it has to find the right gear, but it does it really quickly. It's not like these old school gearboxes where they just threw lots of gears at them so it sounded impressive. This one's actually quite intelligent. It's fairly lag free, so once you do get stuck into it, it begins moving. Now the big difference here with Ford as well is the characteristic of the throttle. They give you quite a lot of surge low end in the throttle. It makes you feel like the car is a whole lot more powerful than it is. And that translates out on the road. When you lean on the throttle, really starts using the vehicle's torque band to give you all of that push in the back that you need. It's actually a really impressive setup. It's obviously not quite as smooth as a turbocharged V6 diesel like in the Maric, but for the most part it really suits this chassis. Now there aren't any drive modes per se for on-road driving, but you do have these shifters on the steering wheel. So you flick those down, you get a little display there, but given it's a 10-speed, it takes forever to get through the gears. Or you can slide it down into a sport mode, which kind of just gives you a sharper throttle and then does all the gear shifting for you and holds gears for a little longer as well. Let's talk 0 to 100. Yes, I know, dual cab ute, who cares? But I think it's important because we're able to compare it to other vehicles in this class, so let's give it a crack. Now, what about fuel economy? The average that Ford claims is 7.4 litres per 100 kilometres. Let's see what we're sitting on. Okay, we're on 10.3, so it's significantly higher than Ford's claim, and that's over quite a long distance as well, over 1,500 kilometres. So that is much higher. And look, I mean, it is a smaller engine compared to a lot of the other vehicles in this class, so it has to work a little bit harder, and perhaps that's the reason that it is using a slight bit more fuel than the competitors. Let's move on to ride. Now, this is the bit that I'll probably spend just a little bit of time on. Ford, even though they haven't dramatically changed this really a great deal since PX2 was launched, is just the class leader when it comes to ride in these vehicles. They soak up bumps beautifully. A lot of the engineering work has been done right here in Australia, so it means that they are tailored for Australian roads. And I've mentioned this in other videos before, our roads aren't necessarily worse than other roads around the world. It's more the conditions. So as we drive along, I'm on a single lane country road here. If there's someone that comes towards me, I need to dart off the side of the road. I've got potholes, I've got gravel. They're all completely different road surfaces. As I come back on, I've got undulations, it's corrugated, I then hit the gravel, it gets even worse. So the vehicle has to be able to deal with this whole subset of conditions. And often when a car comes to Australia, it just isn't tuned right for our roads. And that means that all of the effort they've put into it really translates to a really great driving experience on the road. And that means as you hit some of these things and the lingering undulations, it's not going to buck about and it's not going to fill you with fear every single time you need to move off the side of the road. What about handling? If you do want to go for a little bit of a fang in your dual cab ute, will it keep you happy? Yeah, it actually will. This is good fun. It sits nice and flat through corners. Steering feels really good, so electrically assisted steering rack. This was the big difference between this and the outgoing BT50 that this shared a platform with. Ford upgraded the steering system to EPAS instead of hydraulics. That means you get really nice feel through the wheel. It's on the heavier side, which I think is good for a ute. Makes you feel like you're actually doing something. But on the same token, at low speeds, it's easy to maneuver as well. And in terms of turning circle, 12.7 meters. What does that mean? Well, that means you're probably going to have to be doing some 3-point turns every now and then. Visibility is pretty good. The driving position has me sitting quite low. I know it's a little comical to say that of a high-riding dual cab ute, but it feels nice and comfortable. It feels like I'm driving a car in a sense. I can see clearly down the front of the vehicle. Visibility out the rear is good. The wing mirrors are nice and big, but disappointingly, no blind spot monitoring. You've got to pay extra for that. What about road noise? The engine really doesn't make that much noise. You do hear it a bit when you get into it, but for the most part it's pretty quiet. There is a bit of wind noise coming in, but earlier I mentioned the tyres being all-terrains. I really can't hear anything inside the cabin. It's the same story with the Raptor, those giant BF Goodrich tyres. You really just don't hear anything when you're out cruising on the road. Okay, let's talk off-road equipment, and I'll run through the key stats. 237 millimeters of ground clearance, 29-degree approach angle, that's the angle of the face you can approach before hitting the front of the car, and then a 21-degree departure angle, that's the angle of the face you can do in reverse. Now, in terms of four-wheel drive equipment, you have two-wheel drive high range, so that's your standard driving mode, and it's rear-wheel drive in this vehicle. Four-wheel drive high range, which you can switch to on the fly, so while you're moving and while it's in gear, and four-wheel drive low range, which you have to be stationary for and in neutral, and then it'll allow you to switch into four-wheel drive low range. There's a rear differential lock and hill descent control. Now, the good thing about the rear differential lock here is that you can engage this even if the car is not in four-wheel drive mode. There are a lot of other vehicles on the market like the D-Max, the BT50, the Hilux, where you have to be in low range for the rear diff lock to work. So it's important to note that this is the superior system for that kind of driving compared to those. So let's give this a shot. Oh, by the way, if you don't know what any of this stuff means or it's a little bit confusing, click up here to watch our explainer on four-wheel drive controls where we just run through the basics. It's good to brush up your skills anyway. Okay, so we'll flick over to four-wheel drive using our little switch. You can see 4H appears there. It is confirmed and locked in. Let's see if we can climb our grade here. It's not overly steep, everything's nice and dry. This feels great. It's nice and smooth, it's not too bumpy. It's really climbing up here with ease. Even with the 10-speed auto, it's not getting itself into the wrong gear. I'll switch that parking sensor off. Yeah, it's just walked up there with ease. And I get really good response from the throttle as well, so it's not surging or doing anything silly. Let's see how it goes in terms of ground clearance over our rocks here. It may look easy, but there are some scary looking rocks here that could definitely bash a hole under this car. So I'm going to go down nice and easy. It has hill descent control, so I'm going to switch that on as well. I'll climb down here. All right. Look, it's actually really good. It's allowing me to crawl down just with the throttle. So as I modulate the throttle, it's basically gradually giving me more and more speed. Whoops, little surge there. Okay, so you got to really stay off that brake pedal. The second you touch the brake pedal, it starts locking it into position. I can hear it working as well. Okay, that's not too bad. Look, it works well. I think you just have to trust in the system. And look, I probably prefer to just manually control descent, but it is good to see that system there. But it does interact with that brake pedal quite harshly. So the second you go on the brake pedal, it kind of clamps down and stops you really quickly, as opposed to being a gradual slowdown. Now, in terms of wading depth, 800 millimeters, which is class leading in this segment. Now, I would normally show you this, but unfortunately the river is high today, and this will become a boat instead of a dual cab ute. So the Ford Ranger, I know this is going to sound lame, but I don't know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's kind of what they've done with this. Incremental improvements. The addition now of FordPass Connect means you do get these cool features that you can't get in other dual cab utes. And you can be a little bit nostalgic as well, because it's engineered and designed here in Australia. And then that talent is exported overseas as well. It's still a solid performer, and the 2-litre turbocharged diesel engine does a really good job. So it is hard to pick faults with this. The interior is probably a little bit dated, but with the new Ranger just around the corner, I'm really excited to see what they do with it, and hopefully, fingers crossed, they stick a V6 diesel under the bonnet. So let me know in the comments section below, is it overrated? Do you think its time is done, or is this still the ute to go to in this segment? Let me know what your thoughts are below, and if not, what are you buying instead? If you did enjoy this video, please share it, and also don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and follow it up with the bell icon as well. But until next time, take it easy.